Hello Sorare managers, welcome to another video on the Sorare Contender YouTube channel. Today I'm going to talk you through a watch list of Scottish Premiership players that I've put together. If you're like me and you're going to be competing in the Contenders division for the rest of this season and into the next one as well, these are the players that you need to be keeping an eye on. So I have, like I said in the previous video, I've been in Scotland now for almost 9 years, go to a lot of Celtic home games, and I've built up a good knowledge of the Scottish League. I was playing the Fantasy Scotland game for a couple of years, so I used to spend my Saturday nights not just watching Match of the Day of the English games, but also watching the Scottish highlights afterwards. So, like I said, good knowledge, so I thought I would share that with you guys. This might help you with some new signings or building lineups over the next couple of weeks. So the order here, I've got it in order of price, highest to lowest. Of course, Rangers are not a licensed team on Sorare, but they do have a few players with cards. So Todd Cantwell here is the first one. The issue with Todd is, particularly in the rare division, he only has, I think, 13 rare cards. So very hard to get hands on him. Again, if you can, maybe in the limited division, can be a very good scorer on the platform. Just having a quick look at that here. Lots of green scores there. A couple of DNPs recently, but as the title race hots up in Scotland over the next few weeks, I would expect to see Todd Cantwell in the starting 11 more often than not. So if you can get your hands on one for a decent price, probably worth doing so. Elsewhere, we've got Owen Beck, who's on loan from Liverpool, playing for Dundee. Probably the best left back in the Scottish Premiership this season. Very expensive to buy, around 100 quid on rare, but a very good scorer, takes a lot of corners and pops up in very good positions in open play as well. Just a quick snapshot of his scores there as well. Again, plenty of green scores in there over the last year. So again, a good player to have if you own him already, or if you can get him for a decent price. Next on the list, you're going to see a lot of Celtic players here, of course. Dominant team in the league, and they've obviously got a lot more cards than Rangers do. So Matt O'Reilly, most people already know who he is if you're a Sorare manager. He hasn't been amazing in recent times. If I look at his scores over the past, let's look over the last 6 months, for example, I'm sure there's a bit of a drop off. Yeah, so if you go back, 3 or 4 months, lots of 70s, 80s, and 90s. In more recent times, what's that? In the last 9 game weeks that he's played, only 2 green scores. But most importantly, they've come recently. An 82 in game week 459 and a 100 in the 7-1 victory against Dundee. I was at that game. 7-1, it could have been 14-1, but of course Celtic always find a way to concede a goal, which is why I do not own a Joe Hart in my collection. So Matt O'Reilly, very good chance he'll move in the summer, but while he's still at Celtic, a very good scorer, and he will be a captain very often in my Contenders teams, in-season Contenders teams. Going down the list here a little bit, we have Alistair Johnston, Celtic right back. I think I've included 11 Celtic players here. So I think this is, for me, kind of the best Celtic starting 11 at the moment and the best cards for Sorare. Alistair Johnston he's not having his best ever Celtic season, but he has improved in recent times, both passing the eye test in real life, and his scores have improved on Sorare as well. Just look at that. There's 3 100s in there, as well as a 99 and a 93. Had a goal ruled out recently as well. Popping up in good positions, just a very good player. And absolutely locked in as the Celtic right back, I think, for this season and probably for next season also. I don't currently own his rare card. I did have one, sold one, and I'm looking to get one back, hopefully when his price dips a bit towards the end of the season. You've got John Suter at Rangers. He's got a card from his Hearts days. But again, like Cantwell, Suter tends to be expensive. There's only 16 rare cards on the market. So again, if you can get one, great. But I wouldn't be paying through the nose for those. Beside him, Cameron Carter-Vickers. by far and away the best centre back at Celtic, will always be in the team if he is fit, but that is the problem. I think he's missed possibly about 20 games in total this year. If he can put those problems behind him, I think it stems back to, I think he had a knee operation during last summer, and it's kind of been causing other issues with muscular injuries, and he comes into the team and out of the team from time to time. But again, score wise, if he's in the team, he does score very well, and hopefully when Celtic sign a new goalkeeper next season, there will be more clean sheets and these cards will be even more useful. Carter Vickers, I think it's a good idea to pick one up now for the rest of this season and more so for next season as well, because chances are his price will probably rise next year. Going down the list here, Liam Scales, who's currently injured. Liam Scales is an interesting one because he's one of the top scoring performers on Sorare, but the jury is still out among Celtic fans whether he will be long-term first choice alongside Cameron Carter-Vickers. I don't think he will be. I think his form has dropped off in recent weeks. He's had a very good, had a very good start to the season, good middle part, but even his Sorare scores kind of reflect a bit of a drop off. He's now injured as well. There's no details on that in terms of a time frame. And if we have a look at his price graph, that has taken a tumble as well. So if we look back there, for a rare Liam Scales, you were paying 300 quid on the 1st of February. His most recent sale, just £89. But you might look at that and think £89 is cheap for a very good scorer. But there's a reason I don't own his card, because I'm not convinced he will be first choice long term. We could go into next season and it could be Carter Vickers and someone else, someone we already have at the club, or a new signing could come in. So I would be reluctant to buy a Liam Scales for those reasons. And again, we don't know the injury status anyway. Next on the list, Lawrence Shankland at Hearts. Most people already know about Shanks. Brilliant forwards, very reliable scorer on the platform this season. There it is, not too many low scores there. Could get a move in the summer, but even if he does, hopefully to a team still on the Sorare platform, and wherever he goes, he's going to perform well. I've got one of his cards, and again, a player you can pick up a little bit cheaper now than previously. If we have a look at the price graph for the last 3 months, so going back not too far, the 6th of February, Shankland 2022-23 card was going for about £150. Most recent sale, £57. Now, I think if you can get a Shankland for 50 or 60 quid, that is money well spent for the rest of this season and next season as well, wherever he plays. I know some people will be reluctant to buy him if you're focused on contenders. You might be afraid he goes to, a championship club in England or something like that, but there's every chance he stays in the Scottish Premiership, even if he does move as well with one of the bigger sides. So Shankland, big fan of him. His teammate Zander Clark is having a very good season as the Hearts #1. Lots of Hearts fans really like Craig Gordon, but Craig Gordon is now 40 or 41 years old, so I think his time is probably past. Zander Clark has done nothing wrong, really, and that's why he's still in the team. Not great scores recently, but over the course of the last 3 to 6 months, he has been a good scorer on the platform. Again, I picked up his card recently, and I will be using him in my in-season lineups for the rest of this season. Again, like most players, as we're heading towards the end of the season, as a lot of people are maybe selling their contender cards, you can get players like Zander Clark now cheaper than they were previously. 16th of January, Zander Clark was going for 200 quid. Most recent sale, 77 quid. So there's a lot of value to be had if you've got one eye on next season as well. We continue down this watch list. Of course, this is on the Sorare data website. You can follow this watch list there, and I'm going to aim to update this after each game week for the rest of this season and next year as well. I've added Kellarus, picked up his card recently as well. Aberdeen and Kellarus have had a terrible season. A big club in Scotland should be much higher in the table, but historically Roos has been a pretty good scorer. I think previous season, if I go to his all-time here, on Sorare data. There's plenty of big scores in there. Over the last year, hasn't been so good, but most recent game week 78, that's under a caretaker manager now that Neil Warnock is gone. I like Aberdeen cards for the rest of this season because they're going to finish in the bottom 6, so their last 5 fixtures of the season will be against the weakest teams in the Scottish Premiership. There could be a new manager bounce, and yeah, players like Kellerus and a few others who I'm going to mention soon could be worth picking up. Price graph for the last 3 months, again, I picked them up at £36. Again, if I go back a year, Kellerus was very, very expensive, certainly out of my price range. You're looking at people were paying 500 quid for Kellerus in August at the start of the season. So from 500 quid to 35 quid is a hell of a drop off. And part of that is out of contract at the end of the season. We don't know if he's going to stay or if he's going to go somewhere else. So my hope is he either stays at Aberdeen and I can use him next year, or he stays within the Contenders division and I can also use him there also. So we'll see what happens there. But again, a player worth picking up. There's not much downside to that when his price is much lower now. Callum McGregor, Celtic captain, currently injured. Price has dropped a wee bit as well. Not an amazing scorer on the platform, but a steady Eddie that can get you 60s, maybe 70s fairly regularly. So I like him. Got one of his cards as well. For this season, Will Dennis is a good goalkeeper at Kilmarnock, but he is on loan. And again, so you don't really know what's going to happen there next season. So again, maybe you're reluctant to buy him just at the moment, but if you already have him, decent option for the rest of the season. Going down the list a little bit further, we have Blair Spittle at Motherwell. Very consistent performer this year. Looks like he's going to Hearts next season, so stays within the Contenders division. Just a really good player. Takes a lot of set pieces. Just a quality player. And it's no surprise to see him getting a move to Hearts. There's some of his scores, a lot of green ones in more recent months. Been in my gallery for quite a while, and I'll be keeping him for the rest of this season and for his time at Hearts as well. A couple of more Celtic guys here. Greg Taylor, left back. No threat to his game time for the rest of this season. We might sign a left back in the summer, but for now, Greg Taylor is totally safe. Rio Hatate coming back from injury very soon, maybe as soon as the next game week. But we do play Livingston on a plastic pitch, so I think Brendan Rodgers will be careful with certain players. Maybe Hatate, McGregor, Carter Vickers, maybe even a bit of a risk for that one with his injury history. So Rangers in the game week after that is probably where we'll see the likes of Hatate and McGregor if they are over their fitness issues. Hatate should come back in and play most games for the rest of the season and should be an important part of the team next year as well, especially if O'Reilly leaves. So a good long-term hold. Elsewhere, Mitov, very good goalkeeper at St Johnstone. He is fighting it out to be Bulgaria #1 at the moment as well. Played their most recent fixture. Does play for a relegation-threatened team, but again, there will be some decent fixtures at the end of the season in the bottom 6 split of the Scottish Premiership, and could well get a decent move in the summer because he has been one of the better performing goalkeepers in the Scottish Premiership this year. You've got Daisen Maeda. I was kind of reluctant to add Maeda to the watch list because I don't think he's a fantastic Sorare player. That's kind of reflected in his scores. I don't own any of his cards and I'm not in a rush to get one. If I look at his price at the moment, it's probably at around 30 quid, 35 quid for a rare. More importantly, what are his scores like over the last, let's say this last 6 months? They're not great. There's a lot more, I'm going to say yellow and orange scores there. Not easy doing this as someone who's colourblind, but certainly not too many greens. Only 4 green scores in the last 6 months. So I just don't really like Maeda as a Sorare pick. And again, that is why I do not own any of his cards. Cyril Dessers at Rangers, kind of by default, has been the Rangers' #1 striker due to injuries to other players. Lots of Rangers fans were kind of hating on him towards the start of the season and took a long time to come around to him. But he kind of kept shutting up his critics. He kept scoring goals. And I've always quite liked him when I've seen him as a player. I think he's decent. Now, long term, I don't think he'll be the Rangers' #1 striker next season. I'm hoping that Danilo might actually come back in and take that spot. But I think what's more likely is a new signing will come in and be the number one Rangers striker next season. But Dessers for now and for the rest of this season, he's fine. Again, if you have him, he's not overly expensive. Last 4 or 5 haven't been great, but I still expect him to get plenty of starts. Maybe he may not start every game. You can get Fabio Silva up front from time to time, but Dessers is fine. But again, wouldn't be in a rush to go there because long term next season, there's some question marks over whether he'll be starting or not. Theo Bair at Motherwell is having a kind of a breakthrough season in Scotland. He didn't do much at his previous clubs. He's still under 23 for the rest of this season. And yeah, he's a handful up front. A lot of defences cannot handle him. And he's having a very good season, scoring plenty of goals. His place in the Motherwell team is pretty secure at the moment as well. So maybe a little stack with Blair Spittle and Theo Bair for the rest of the season could be productive. So I don't mind a purchase on him. Kyogo is on the watch list. He was much better in the game against St Johnstone. He looked back to his best. I'm hoping that will secure him as number one striker again at Celtic. Adamita's come in on loan and he's done very well, but he was on the bench in the most recent game. So again, I am hopeful that Kyogo is the main man again. We know the talent is there. We just need to see some consistency from him. And more importantly, we need to see him getting service, because when you go to a Celtic game and you watch Kyogo, his runs are fantastic. Just lacking some creativity from the midfielders and the wingers. But I think players like Nicholas Kuhn coming in will only improve Kyogo as a Sorare asset. So picked up 70 points in the 3-1 victory at St Johnstone, a goal and an assist in that game. Elsewhere, Mizian Mayalida, very impressive player at Hibernian this season. On loan, I think it's from Hertha Berlin, I'm going to say. He just, to be honest, looks too good for the Scottish Premiership, and I don't expect to see him in the league next season. Lots of good scores recently. I picked one up and I sold him for a bit of profit. Let me just check that. I think I doubled my money roughly on him. Picked him up for 18 quid on the 8th of March, and then I sold him going into a midweek game week for 35. So almost doubled. But again, part of me probably wishes I kept him, because I think he's quite a useful player to have for the rest of the campaign. So Mayalida, a good pickup. Elsewhere, who have we got here? Nicholas Kuhn, who I mentioned, very impressive in his last 2 Celtic performances. I think long term has a very good chance of becoming, number one right winger, cutting in on his left foot. Picked up one of his cards recently for relatively cheap, so hopefully that is the case. Miovski, very, very good striker at Aberdeen. Again, suffered from Aberdeen having a very poor season. This guy, very likely to move in the summer. And again, hopefully it's within the Contenders division. But even if it's not, could get a bump on his price if I need to sell him. His last 7 scores are all pretty terrible. But, the 7 or 8 performances before that were very good. So what you're going to have here is a dip in price, which could be just before a good run of fixtures and a return to form. So I picked him up about, how long ago is that? 1st of March. So just about a month ago, less than a month ago, about 50 quid. Most recent sale, 32 quid. So again, Miovski's a player I think is worth picking up. Good for the rest of this season with good fixtures, and who knows what happens next season. Could still be at Aberdeen, could be somewhere else in the Premiership, or get a good move to a good side elsewhere. Fabio Silva on the watch list has looked better recently at Rangers in recent game weeks. Uncertainty over his future next season though again, so I'd be fairly reluctant to go there. Had one of his cards and sold it recently. Again, not a fantastic scorer on Sorare. Going down the list here, you've got Lennon Miller, probably the best young under 18 player in the Scottish Premiership. Even you could say best under 21 player. I should really say under 23 when I'm talking about Sorare, but extremely talented. Could go very far in the game if he's managed correctly and he's got his head screwed on, which, so far both seem to be the case. I've owned him and sold him a few times for a bit of profit here and there, but I am the most recent purchaser. Picked him up for 25 quid just a couple of days ago. My plan now is just to keep him long term, maybe not use him very often in competition, but some players I just like owning and seeing where their career goes and kind of go on that journey with them. And I'm very excited to see where Lennon Miller's career goes. And he's scoring okay. You know, there's a couple of 60s in there in recent times. There's an 80 in there previously. So he's only going to get better. And again, chance of a big move as soon as this summer. So we'll see how that one plays out. Joe Hart's on the watch list, but again, you know, he's retiring at the end of the season. So you got to decide, do you pay 25, 30 quid for 7 or 8 game weeks? It could pay off, but I don't own his card. I don't think I'm going to buy one. Celtic don't really keep clean sheets anyway. Joe Hart, he's just not a good scorer on Sorare. Again, if I look over the past year, his highest score over the last year is 79. You know, he's never getting 90s or 100s. And over the last roughly 4 or 5 months, his highest score is 66. There's only 4 green scores out of the last, that's probably about 15 to 20 game weeks. So, yeah, yes, he plays for Celtic, but I think if you're stacking a Celtic, if you have a Celtic stack, I think you should have a non-Celtic goalkeeper. I think you should have 4 Celtic outfield players and a different goalkeeper. That's what I tend to do. I tend to throw in Xander Clark with my Celtic stack, because you know Clark's just a better Sorare scorer. Talking about Clark and Hearts, Frankie Kent is a pretty good Sorare scorer. He's injured at the moment, but it seems to be short term. I've picked him up just in recent days. There's his scores. You know, there's 80s, there's 90s, there's 100s in there. Missed the last couple of games, but you can pick him up maybe a bit cheaper now than he was previously. I managed to get him for £29. If I go back 6 months, even just going back a few months, 11th of February, just over, what's that, a month and a half ago, Frankie Kent going for 70 quid. So I'm quite happy to pick him up at a much better price and hopefully a good asset for next season as well. Going down the list, you've got Joe Newell, very consistent, steady Eddie at Hibernian. Sold him recently and regretted doing so, and I might end up going back and getting another one. The last 6 game weeks, all green scores between 62 and 72. Very useful player to have in the gallery, and about 30 quid at the moment, maybe even a bit less. You've got Kai Rolls at Hearts as well, but I do think Frankie Kent is the better scorer on Sorare, but Rolls is decent. There's a couple of 100s in there in recent times. I picked up a Kai Rolls for about 7 quid. And then someone bought him off me recently. I just listed him for a price that I didn't think he would sell for. But I think Australia had a very cheap or very good matchup in an international break. And someone snapped him up. So I bought him for 7 quid and someone took him off me for 19. So again, you know, I'm quite happy to take that bit of profit and can always go back to Kai Rolls later. But yeah, I think Frankie Kent is a better pickup than Kai Rolls. Going down the list here, you've got Aina, who I think is on loan to Ross County. He's an under-23 player. Again, not a very good team, but he's kind of been defying that with some good scores recently. But again, wouldn't be in a huge rush to go out and buy one. Elsewhere, you've got Luke McCowan. If you haven't seen my competition on X or Twitter or whatever it's called nowadays, I'm giving away my rare Luke McCowan. So all the details are on the Sorare Contender Twitter account for that one. You just need to like and share a couple of things. Luke McCowan is the talisman at Dundee. Really good player. Wouldn't be surprised to see him move up to a bigger team. But I think there is talk of a new contract for next season and beyond. You know, look at that in the last 6 or 7 game weeks. There's 4 scores above 70. Going back, there's 3 scores above 80. Takes penalties. Owen Beck's been taking a lot of corners, but again, if you think ahead to next season, if Owen Beck goes back to Liverpool, McCowan probably takes over corners again. He's got a very good left foot, so a good short-term pick and long-term pick. Connor Barron, again, a very good young player in the Scottish Premiership. Not a fantastic scorer on Sorare, but again, under a better manager, if we get a better Aberdeen team for the rest of the season and next season, Connor Barron could be a useful part of the gallery. Kenneth Vargas at Hearts, very good young player. Looks like he's going to sign permanently. Under 23 until 2026. I picked him up recently, and I think he's going to be part of my strategy if I go down the route of an under 23 team. There's, you know, it's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of scores, but he's in and out of the team sometimes. I just think next season Vargas could be a big player, especially if Shankland is no longer at Hearts. So again, a player worth picking up, I think. Going down the list a bit further, Daniel Armstrong, talisman at Kilmarnock, takes corners, set pieces, penalties, and I think he's an underpriced player on the platform. I sold his old season card recently, and I picked up a new season. If we have a look at his scores, there's plenty of 60s and 70s in there. Not every week, but this guy can score very well and can be quite useful, and his price is very affordable. I sold an old season card for £18 on the 14th of March, and I bought a new season card for £12.50 the next day. So Danny Armstrong will be part of my in-season strategy for the rest of the season. Elsewhere, Will Fish on loan to Hearts is a decent scorer on the platform. Can be stacked if you already own a Hibernian goalkeeper. Although there's some slight concerns over David Marshall's fitness at the moment. I think he had a stiff neck in the last game, came off at half time. St Mirren don't offer too much in terms of Sorare this season. They've been quite inconsistent in recent months, but Greg Kelty is a good player. He was a very good player kind of more for the cap modes. Maybe he's not so good going into the new format, but again, takes penalties the odd time. Mark O'Hara used to take penalties. Kelty was taking them in more recent times. I think Mandron's missed a few, so it's unclear who the St Mirren penalty taker is, but Greg Kelty is in the conversation. Getting towards the bottom of the list now. Again, a couple of young players here. Leighton Clarkson, who I think is just a really, really good player and should be in the Aberdeen starting 11 every single week, but certain managers didn't feel the same as me. He was in the starting 11 for the most recent game under the caretaker manager, and he picked up a score of 63. Clarkson's under 23 until 2026 as well. So again, I think he's a good pickup and a good long-term hold. Don't expect him to be at Aberdeen forever. I would expect him to get a good move to a better side. David Watson at Kilmarnock, another very talented young player, scored a brilliant individual goal recently when Kilmarnock beat St Mirren 5-2. Under 23 until 2029. This guy, David Watson, is up there with the likes of Lennon Miller, Connor Barron as the best young players in the Scottish Premiership. Doesn't always start games, but I think that will change maybe going into next season, and we'll see him starting even more regularly. He's probably just been managed quite sensibly by Derek McInnes at the moment. There's 60 scores and there's 70 scores in here. Maybe he's not, again, probably a better cap player than the new format. But again, one to keep an eye on where his career goes. Stephen Kingsley's another option in the Hearts defence, but I do prefer Frankie Kent. Kingsley's quite injury prone. Nieuwenhof has kind of emerged in more recent times as a very good player at Hearts, but he is injured at the moment, I think. And again, not a fantastic scorer, but could be a useful piece for some depth in the gallery. Elsewhere, Matty Kennedy's a very good player at Kilmarnock, very cheap, quite useful if you need to plug a gap for a game week. But I do think Danny Armstrong's the best player to go for at Kilmarnock. Jan Danda, pretty cheap, going to Hearts, good player, probably going to improve on his scores at Hearts, but maybe a bit more of a rotation concern when he gets there. Danda maybe is better for the rest of this season, more so than next season. And towards the bottom, we have Marley Watkins, who's performing very well as a striker at Kilmarnock in recent times. He does have a lot of competition on the bench, though, because Kevin Van Veen is there and Greg Stewart. So some very good strikers breathing down the neck of Watkins and Kyle Vassell. But Watkins has stepped it up, and I think he's pretty safe for the rest of that season. Maybe next season it might get a bit dicey if Van Veen is still there, for example. But Watkins has been really good in recent times. Lewis Mayo, another very good young defender at Kilmarnock. He's under 23 for the rest of this season. His price has dipped quite significantly as well. People were paying £40 for him around the start of February, and now he's going for, most recent sale, £5. And he can score well in certain, just don't look at his most recent DNP, 1 point and 16 points, or score of 16 I should say, but he can score well in certain matchups. Stuart Findlay, another decent defender who scores better than Mayo at Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock are just a very good outfit and probably will improve again next season under very good management. Simon Murray's been good for Ross County in recent times, but again, I wouldn't be in a rush to go there. but the scores have been very good. And the final pick is Graham Carey, my fellow Irishman, who again he's probably underpriced on the platform because he can score very well. If you look at this, there's, let's say the last 10 game weeks, there's 77, 79, 67, 88, and 61 among the bad performances. Again, not playing for a very good team, but price-wise, I picked one up recently for £3.94. Most recent sale, £1.15. That is a joke of a price because Carey has a great left foot, takes some set pieces, and he's just a good player. So there you have it. There is a watch list of Scottish Premiership players if you're playing the Contenders division. Check out my first video if you haven't done so already, which introduces my gallery for the rest of the season and my plans for in-season and classic. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on the way out, and I'll be back again later this week with another video to build some lineups and to get ready for the first game week of the new format. Thank you for taking the time to listen, folks, and I wish you all a very good week.